on all your favorite brands.
Medical announcement.
Make your vote count with Ross Perot.
As you go into the voting booths tomorrow, you and millions of other voters will be making the decision to either hire or fire the President of the United States. You do this with your vote. You are about to give that person the most important job in the world. Before you cast your vote, I urge you to ask yourself, what qualities should our president have? This man can order you, your children, and your grandchildren to go to war. He can literally sacrifice your lives. Shouldn't our president have the highest moral and ethical standards? Shouldn't his life make him a role model for your children? Shouldn't he always keep his promises? Shouldn't he be a person who lives in the center of the field of ethical behavior, asking only, is it right or wrong? Or should he be running up and down the sidelines saying, is it legal or illegal? And wondering, how do I spin this one if I get caught? As you know, our president, his wife, and a number of his close associates face serious criminal charges. Some of these associates are already in prison. Jerome Zeifman, the chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee during the Watergate era and a lifelong Democrat, recently said, there is now probable cause to consider our president and the First Lady as felons who are likely to be indicted after the November the 5th elections. Before you cast your ballot, ask yourself, would you hire a person facing criminal charges to babysit your children? Of course not. To paint the interior of your house? No, they might steal something. Or to be the cashier at the cash register at a fast food restaurant? Nope, you wouldn't do it. Or would you even give a person facing criminal charges money to buy groceries for you and your family? No, you'd be afraid he wouldn't come back with the groceries. If the answer to these questions is no, how could you ever consider voting for a person with pending criminal charges to be President of the United States? With these thoughts in mind, we paid $1 million for 1 hour of network television time tonight to give the President of the United States the opportunity to look you, the voters, squarely in the eye and answer questions about these criminal charges. He refused the offer, and he has been completely avoiding the press on all of these scandals. Ask yourself, if you had been accused of burning your neighbor's house, stealing a car, and robbing a bank, and you were totally innocent, you wouldn't be able to wait to go public immediately and clear your good name. On the other hand, if you were guilty, you would remain silent, knowing that anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. We don't have to accept this kind of behavior from our elected officials. You can fight back starting Tuesday with something that all the money in the world can't buy for the special interests. That's your vote. You must cast an informed vote tomorrow, because we are on the verge of Watergate 2 and a constitutional crisis.
Ross Perot personifies how one person can make a difference in the lives of others. When his first company went public, he sold $5 million of his stock, and then he did something extraordinary. Ross gave half of it away within 60 days.
And people couldn't understand why I would do that. Well, I just felt that I had an obligation to share my good fortune with people in need.
Ross Perot gave the money to benefit an elementary school in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Dallas. Later, he gave an even larger amount to support another innovative early childhood education program, a school that works with parents and their children from birth through the 3rd grade. Ross Perot was taught from childhood to help the man who is down.
I followed my parents' example. I've seen my father do it 1,000 times with money he didn't have, my mother do it again and again and again with things she didn't have to share. And I was just taught that from infancy, literally, to do that.
Ross Perot has given millions of dollars to organizations that help people in need, including the Salvation Army. His wife, Margot, is on the national board.
If anybody gets to heaven, it'll be the people in the Salvation Army. They devote their lives to people in need.
To help the hungry and homeless, Ross Perot provided the building to house the North Texas Food Bank. He also provided the building for a homeless shelter in downtown Dallas. He has provided more than $1 million to bring scouting to disadvantaged boys in the inner city and to build a Girl Scout camp. Ross Perot and his family spent several $1 million to provide the finest medical technology for mothers and their babies to ensure that newborns have the best possible start in life. And Ross Perot has given tens of millions of dollars for advancements in medical research, impacting the lives and health of millions of Americans in a positive way, and assisting our troops who have been wounded in combat. Although Ross Perot or anyone representing him has never sought public recognition, he has been recognized worldwide for his concern for others. He was the first recipient of the Raoul Wallenberg Award, given for unmatched courage, devotion to the improvement of the quality of life for all individuals, for the strength of commitment to the fundamental principles of freedom, and for fortitude to act while others only watch. This is why he is campaigning in 1996 to serve as your president. In 1986, Ross Perot became the third recipient of the Winston Churchill Award for his bold imagination, pioneering spirit, and dynamic leadership. He is the first recipient of the Admiral Arleigh Burke Award from the Navy League of the United States for his outstanding leadership, personal integrity, personal achievement, and unselfish dedication to America, traits we must have in our president and commander-in-chief. And Ross Perot is the first recipient of the Patrick Henry Award for his leadership in human rights, education, the war on drugs, and his commitment to public service. Each honor speaks of his vision, his integrity, his character, and his commitment to the values he acquired as a child and that he continues to exhibit today. Values on which this country was founded and built more than 200 years ago by a handful of similarly minded people. The spirit of 76 on the wall behind his desk and the portrait of our first president, George Washington, are famous reminders to him and to all of us of the principles on which our country was founded, and that ordinary Americans are capable of extraordinary achievements. They are the reminders of the power of one vote. Your vote.
Common Cause, one of Washington's most respected watchdog groups, is calling for criminal investigations of both President Clinton's campaign and Senator Dole's campaign for millions of dollars of illegal contributions and illegal campaign spending. I never thought I would live to see the day when a convicted drug dealer would be invited to the White House. We now have a president who accepted a $20,000 donation from a convicted drug dealer, Jorge Cabrera, who served 2 terms in the 1980s in jail and who has ties to the Cali drug cartel and Fidel Castro. This man was invited to the White House for a Christmas party, and he had his picture taken with Mrs. Clinton and Vice President Gore. Makes you proud to be an American, doesn't it? A month after his White House visit, this man was arrested again for possession of 5,828 pounds of cocaine, and he's now serving a 19-year jail sentence. We now have a president who, in exchange for $100,000 in political donations, will allow his supporters to spend the night in the White House in the Lincoln bedroom. Hard-working Americans pay the taxes to support the White House. It belongs to you. It is illegal to sell access to the White House in this manner. If you elect me as your president, the White House will never be for sale at any price. The New York Times in 1995 called Indonesia the most corrupt country in the world. Our president has deep financial ties to Indonesia, starting when he was governor of Arkansas. Our president appointed John Wong, a man who worked for an Indonesian conglomerate owned by the Riyadi family, to a senior position in the United States government overseeing international trade. Interesting. And he gave him a top security clearance. In addition, Mr. Wong was given a $780,000 going-away severance package by the Indonesians before he joined our government. That's a sweet kiss goodbye. The Riyadi family has given over $200,000 to the Democrats, and the Riyadis received invitations for 15 people to attend President Clinton's 1993 inauguration. They also had preferential treatment at the President's Economic Conference in Little Rock, Arkansas. Just days after the Riyadis boasted that John Wong had been placed in his government job, Mr. Wong attended high-level meetings on Indonesian trade at the Commerce Department. What did the Indonesians get? Our trade deficit with Indonesia has doubled in the last 4 years of the Clinton administration. That's jobs leaving the USA, despite the fact that Indonesia is in huge violation of child labor laws and the humanitarian treatment of its people. The president claimed he was going to impose sanctions against them over human rights abuse, and then he dropped it. A few months ago, John Wong left his job in the U.S. government and went to work full-time for the Democratic National Committee raising money. He's been one of their most productive fundraisers, getting money from some really interesting and strange Asian sources. He raised $250,000 from a Korean business headed up by a man named John Lee. Mr. Lee attended a dinner at the 1996 Democratic Convention, hosted by Vice President Al Gore. The Democrats had to return this contribution because the Los Angeles Times caught them, and it was an illegal contribution. Mr. Lee's disappeared. But before he left the United States, he had dinner with President Clinton, purchasing 5 tickets at $50,000 apiece. Where does Mr. Lee get all this money? Nobody knows. Do you know what his job is? He works as a counselor in Korea to patients who have had cosmetic surgery. That's a career opportunity you didn't know existed. Mr. Wong also arranged a fundraiser at a Buddhist temple in Los Angeles. Vice President Gore raced out there to attend the event and received $142,000 from monks and nuns who are sworn to a life of poverty. They later said that Americans gave them the money and told them to give it to the Democrats. This is money laundering in a place of worship. Is there no shame? How did the White House spin this one? And they always have a good spin. Vice President Al Gore, who attended the fundraiser, said, "I thought it was a community outreach meeting." Well, it was. He was reaching out for illegal money. John Wong is not the only person raising money for the Democrats. 2 former White House officials, James Wood and Mark Middleton, were reportedly soliciting contributions in Taiwan, according to the Taiwan press. The leading political party in Taiwan pledged $15 million to the Democrats. This is during the period that China was threatening Taiwan, and President Clinton sent an aircraft carrier group to Taiwan as a show of support. I have a question to the voters. Should the lives of our military forces ever be put at risk in exchange for campaign contributions? An Indian, Mr. Gandhi, contributed $325,000 to the Democratic campaign and presented President Clinton the Mahatma Gandhi Humanitarian Award in the White House. The family of Mahatma Gandhi says they have no knowledge of this man. He's a fraud. Mr. Gandhi owes the state of California $10,000 in back taxes. His driver's license has been revoked because he can't pay his traffic tickets. And guess who the only other recipient of the Mahatma Gandhi Award was? A Japanese war criminal from World War II who gave Mr. Gandhi the $325,000. You know the Secret Service knew about that one and got overruled. Many members of the Clinton administration have been investigated on criminal charges. Some have been convicted. Webster Hubbell was Mrs. Clinton's boss and former law partner in Arkansas, who the president appointed to the Justice Department. He is now serving time in prison. But before he went, Mr. Hubbell received $100,000 from the Indonesians while he was being prosecuted. For what? You know what. The New York Times recently endorsed President Clinton in a glowing 2-column editorial. It filled half the page. But 1/4 of that editorial was dedicated to begging him to start keeping his promises, stop violating the law, and operate in a moral and ethical way. The New York Times is asking him to have a character and integrity transplant in midlife. That doesn't work very often. This is like telling Bonnie and Clyde that they can be bank presidents if they will just stop robbing banks. On the Republican side, the vice president of Senator Dole's Finance Committee is a Cuban-born sugar baron named Alonzo Van Hool. His company gave $244,000 to the Republican Party. His PAC has given $44,000 to both parties. And what did Van Hool get in return? $65 million in sugar subsidies championed by Senator Bob Dole. By championing price supports for sugar, Senator Dole has played a key role in the sale of sweeteners made by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, one of Senator Dole's biggest campaign contributors, and the company that just paid a $100 million fine for price fixing. The price supports that Senator Dole fought for cost you, the taxpayer, $1.4 billion a year. Think about it. Time magazine chronicles the senator's legislative record in an article entitled "The Corporate Dole." The New York Times refers to Senator Dole as the master of political favors. Political corruption is discouraging, but you can clean it up by voting your conscience. These corrupt practices are destroying our country, and we must stop them tomorrow. Who benefited from these corrupt practices? Certainly the people did not, but those who gave the money benefited magnificently. And who was really damaged? Our great country and the American people. The standard of living is down for 4 out of 5 working Americans. Your neighborhoods are filled with crime, and your children carry guns to school. Meantime, the Democrats and Republicans are selling out American workers and families to big campaign contributions and foreign interests. Good-paying jobs are leaving the United States by the millions. A vote for either of the other candidates tomorrow rewards them for illegal activities. President Clinton and the Speaker of the House shook hands and promised you that they would reform campaign spending. Since that time, both parties have raised record amounts of soft money, over $500 million. And according to Common Cause, some of this money is being spent illegally in a criminal way. We cannot allow this behavior to continue for one more minute. We must demand the highest ethical standards in the White House. If you elect me as your president, my standard will never be, is it legal or illegal? It will be a much higher standard. Is it right or wrong? Once every 4 years, you get the opportunity to choose the president of this great country. Why would you even think about voting for a president who violates the law, doesn't tell the truth, and doesn't keep his promises? We cannot risk Watergate 2. We must vote for a president who is honest, trustworthy, loyal, and totally committed only to this great country and the American people. Don't waste your vote again in 1996.
The values Ross Perot acquired as a child and that he continues to exhibit today are reflected all around him. Because of his love for the principles of freedom, Ross Perot purchased the only Magna Carta that could ever leave Great Britain. This 700-year-old document is now on display in our National Archives in Washington, D.C., in the same room with the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. As a reminder of the freedom for which the founders overthrew the British, the Aiken Bible, the only Bible ever authorized by Congress, has been on display for many years outside Ross's office. It was authorized during the Revolution by the Continental Congress so that children could study the Bible in school. This bust of Teddy Roosevelt bearing his words of wisdom stands at the entrance to Ross's office. Roosevelt said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena." At Ross Perot's induction into the National Business Hall of Fame, instead of mentioning his business success, Ross was honored as a patriot, populist, and deep believer in familial values, whose generosity has been spread over a wide variety of charities. But his most direct focus is aimed at helping underprivileged children. Among Ross's heroes is Colonel Arthur Bull Simons, who commanded a successful rescue mission into Iran to free 2 employees of Ross's first company, EDS. These items near Ross's desk are reminders of Colonel Simons' courage. Among them, the compass the colonel carried on every raid and rescue mission over 35 years. These paintings have been in his office for years. They express his love and devotion to this country. The 4 Freedoms by Norman Rockwell. And another Rockwell of Abraham Lincoln as a young man. All are daily reminders to Ross Perot and to all of us of the values of our nation, the strength of our people, and the power of one vote, your vote.
You've been told again and again in this campaign that Perot can't win. They said the same thing in 1992. Exit polls taken after the election showed that if people had voted their consciences, 40% would have voted for Perot, 31% for Clinton, and 27% for Bush. The people did not vote their consciences because they were told again and again that Perot couldn't win, and they wanted to vote for a winner. Well, you got what you voted for. Pat Choate and I belong to nobody but you. We belong only to the American people. We were unfairly shut out of the debates because the Republicans and Democrats did not want to discuss our nation's major financial problems. We were not allowed to buy the television time we needed to fully inform you, as we did in '92. But we gave President Clinton an opportunity to join us this evening to answer serious allegations facing him. He declined, knowing that anything he said could be used against him in court. I ask you again, can we afford to have our government grind to a halt while we engage in Watergate II? Can we afford to watch our president pardon criminals? I keep on fighting for our country and the people because 5 years ago I decided I just couldn't live with myself if I let this great country be destroyed by the special interests who have literally bought and control our government. I want to be your president for one reason, to solve these problems that face our great country, restore the American dream for our children and grandchildren, and make the 21st century the greatest in our country's history. At the beginning of our campaign, I introduced to you a little girl named Amanda. I wanted Amanda to grow up in a country where the only limit is her dreams and her willingness to work to make those dreams come true. I will not allow the futures of our children and grandchildren to be stolen by corrupt, power-driven people, and I hope you won't either. How can we return our country to the people? Tonight, I call on the 6 million small business owners and the 80 million people who work for them to vote Perot. Together, we can create the kind of country where your businesses will prosper and you can create the millions of jobs our country must have. I call on the 27.5 million veterans and their families to vote for Perot. I've had a long, close relationship with the veterans of this country. You are our true heroes. But there's one more battle left to fight. We must all come together tomorrow and take our country back from the special interests that control our government. This is an enemy just as formidable as the ones you fought before, and together we can do it. I call on the 18 to 35-year-olds to vote for Perot. Your president says that you and your children are going to pay an 82% tax rate. That is the end of the American dream. We won't let that happen. There are millions of you out there who are determined to pursue your dreams, to be the next Thomas Edison or Alexander Graham Bell. We will have a country where the only limit on your dreams is you. I have lived the American dream. I want you to live the American dream and we will see that you do. Almost half of our citizens don't even bother to vote. I call on the millions of you who do not intend to vote to show up tomorrow and vote for Perot. If you do not vote tomorrow, you will be rewarding the corrupt politicians who are selling your futures to foreign interests. You literally can choose the next president if you will show up and vote tomorrow. Finally, please remember this. A vote for the Reform Party is a vote to put the people back in power. Not only will we take the steps necessary to get our country back in order, but we will give you the final say in national referendums on programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and taxes before the changes are put into law. These programs are for you. You pay for them. Why shouldn't you have the final say in whether or not you want them? Using the referendum, we just took control away from the lobbyists and the big campaign contributors. Just like that. We can win if the groups I just mentioned will vote for Perot tomorrow. Once 25% of the voters cast their votes for Perot and the Reform Party, we will have created an institution with equal status and equal funding with the Democrats and Republicans. And that's certainly not a wasted vote, because in the year 2000, they can't even think about trying to shut us out of the debates. The people in the year, from this point forward, will be sitting at the head of the table, and the special interests will be out looking for work. Amanda, we love you, and we will not let you down. When Amanda wakes up on Wednesday, the world will be a much better place if the voters will vote their consciences. When you go into the voting booth tomorrow, before you pull the lever, ask yourself these questions. If you were in a life or death situation and could only make one telephone call to one of the three candidates for help, which one do you believe would respond immediately? You ought to vote for that candidate. If you were Amanda's father, which one of the three candidates would you be most comfortable having her work with? Vote for that candidate tomorrow. And finally, if something happened to you, which one of the three candidates would you trust to look after your family and make certain they were safe? Vote for that candidate. Why would you even consider voting for someone who doesn't keep his promises, doesn't tell the truth, and has serious criminal charges pending against him? Make history with your vote tomorrow. Working together, all of the corrupt campaign money in the world can't stop us. It has been an honor to be with you tonight. I urge you to immediately turn to ABC for the rest of the story. Thank you, and good night.
A murder victim returns from the grave to catch her